Just west of the picturesque views of the Grand Canyon in northwestern Arizona's Mojave Desert, there lies a little-known Joshua Tree forest which is the largest and densest of its kind. The forest blankets the area known as the Grapevine Mesa and is situated between Lake Mead on the west and the Grand Wash Cliffs on the east. The Arizona Joshua Tree Forest is truly a sight to see and needs to be permanently protected for now and for future generations.
Joshua trees are a tree-like yucca plant, which is a succulent plant. The leaves are succulent. They store water in the stem and in the leaves so that they can survive the really dry, hot times in the Mojave Desert. And one of the really interesting things about Joshua trees is that they're endemic to the Mojave Desert. They only live in this desert. It's the only place on earth that they're found. There are other yuccas all across North America, but the Joshua tree is one of the larger ones and the most dramatic when you get to see it, so that's what makes them kind of fun.
The Joshua tree, which only grows in the Mojave Desert region of Arizona, California, and Nevada, was given its name by a group of Mormon settlers who crossed the Mojave in the mid-19th century. It's actually not a typical tree at all, since it does not produce a trunk with annual rings, but instead its trunk consists of thousands of small fibers. The trees that survive the harsh desert conditions live on average 150 to 200 years with an overall height of near 50 feet. The largest Joshua tree on record was 80 feet or 24 meters tall and estimated to be roughly 1,000 years old.
Joshua trees grow very slowly. There's 3 different studies across the desert, and I did one of them. And we had periods of time of over 20 years in each of those studies. And every one of those studies, no matter where they were in the desert, indicated that the large trees are only growing about 3 centimeters a year, so about 1.5 inches or so. By the time they're about 1 meter tall, they're about 30 years old, and they still haven't reproduced yet. And it's at that size that they start to be less vulnerable to the rabbits and the gophers and the wood rats. And then they've got to probably go from either that size to another meter, and at that point they could start to flower. By that time they're probably 70 years of age in this part of the desert. And so that's a pretty long time to be a juvenile organism in this desert, but that's the way it works out here.
The forest in the Grapevine Mesa encompasses over 44,000 acres, and within its boundaries are 5 different climate zones. Topography and vegetation vary in a distance of 10 miles. Temperatures can change as much as 10 degrees in the short distance. In the lower elevations, about 3,000 feet, the vegetation is sparse and Joshua trees are widely spaced. At the mid-elevations, about 4,000 feet, the Joshua trees are very dense. At higher elevations, around 5,000 feet, you will find juniper, pinyon pine, and cedar mingled with the Joshua. The forest is a great place to partake in outdoor activities such as horseback riding, biking, hiking, night sky viewing, bird watching, and photography, and is abundant with 4x4 trails. All of these activities can be achieved on approved roadways and trails within the forest. The forest is home to a variety of plants and animals. Some of the inhabitants are bobcat, deer, coyote, great horned owl, peregrine falcon, and gambrel quail. The forest is a migratory flyway for a variety of birds such as the lazuli bunting and the Bullock's oriole. Plants which thrive in the forest are blackbush, Mojave yucca, staghorn cholla, and hedgehog cactus. However, winged and four-legged animals aren't the only ones that travel this forest. Native Americans used the Joshua tree for food and to weave baskets. They traveled the Old Ute Trail across northern Arizona, around the west end of the Grand Canyon, and south along the Grand Wash Cliffs for centuries. As a matter of fact, 1,400 years of archaeological evidence suggests the Paiute and Wallapai Indians lived and traveled the trail along the Grand Wash Cliffs. In 1827, Jedediah Smith led his band of mountain men down from Utah. They explored the mountains on the east side of the Colorado River and told about the river coming out of the mouth of the Grand Canyon, so it's likely this group traveled the Grand Wash Cliffs and the Joshua Forest as well. During the 1870s and 1880s, miners worked the gold and silver claims along the western edge of the Joshua Forest. In 1879, George Patterson moved his family out of the gold camps of the Gold Basin to the Joshua Forest and established his ranch to supply miners with meat and vegetables. At one time, the Patterson Ranch had a saloon and a U.S. Mailway station, which are still visible near the old ranch site. The Patterson Corral is still used today by ranchers to water their cattle. The Arizona Joshua Tree Forest has been recognized as an area of special significance since the 1930s. In 1967, the National Park Service designated 5 sections of the densest portion of the forest as a National Natural Landmark. In 1993, the area surrounding the landmark was designated as an area of critical environmental concern. However, these designations do not carry sufficient protections against possible adverse uses or adequate mandates to the Bureau of Land Management as the managing agency. It's been 85 years since this area has been viewed as unique and worthy of preserving, yet the forest is still vulnerable. This area is very much in need of permanent protection to preserve its recreational, economic, and historical value. There are increasing threats such as stripping the land for gravel pits, removal of Joshua trees for road construction, and extraction of precious minerals. Development of the Grand Canyon Skywalk and Adood Ranch, flights over the forest by several helicopter tour companies, and the construction of a straight modern highway through the forest are drawing increasing numbers of visitors to this captivating area. Now is the time for good decisions to be made to ensure the area's future appeal and survival.
There are things that people can do to help Joshua trees. First of all, it's how we're living to be responsible. When we're out in the natural areas, we don't want to do things that would potentially start a wildfire. We don't want to be moving plants around irresponsibly, moving weed seeds around and things like that. Those are some of the really big things. Treat the parks according to the rules so that we're not trampling areas where it's important for small plants to be living, and plants and animals and things like that. We've added impediments to travel of plants and animals by putting in our highways, our power line corridors, our giant cities in the middle of the valleys where plants and animals used to move through in the past. So it's harder for the plants and animals to move around in the landscape now.
The almost unbroken sea of Joshua trees now visible from the road as the visitor travels to the Grand Canyon Skywalk is an important scenic component of an introduction to this area and must be preserved. The Friends of Arizona Joshua Tree Forest is dedicated to permanently protecting the Arizona Joshua Tree Forest for present and future generations. We will accomplish our mission with our diligent hands-on approach using education, advocacy, and stewardship.
The Friends of Joshua Tree Forest have become collaborators of our research group, or we're collaborators with them. They invited us to come over and talk about Joshua trees and wanted to know if we would be interested in the Joshua trees over there and helping them promote what a wonderful Joshua Tree Forest it is. We have worked together in the field. We teamed up. We did a citizen science course all together last spring where the Friends of Joshua Tree Forest members all got together with the research teams of Chris Smith and Leslie DeFalco and myself, and we all went out in groups and made measurements on the Joshua trees to compare that population with populations of Joshua trees in 5 national parks that have Joshua trees and several other places across the Mojave Desert, so that we can understand the bigger picture. So they're taking care of one corner of the desert out there and really focusing on protecting that stand of trees. They're a very vigorous group. Is very serious about the protection of those Joshua trees, and those trees are a very lucky group of trees to have the Friends of Joshua Tree Forest working for them.
Your help is critical to us in accomplishing our goal of national monument status and inclusion in the National Conservation Lands. We invite you to join this 85-year effort to permanently protect the magnificent Arizona Joshua Tree Forest. Now is the time. For more information on how you can help permanently protect this forest, please go to www.joshuatreeforest.org.